In this video we'll be covering how to debug and test data models that are created in Studio. We'll start the process by opening up the demonstration data model called EventWorks, and from there you can see that we've got a number of tables for the data model, and behind the tables there are SQL portions for the tables and the columns. If we have a mistake in some of the SQL syntax, we can detect it by going to the green tick button, which will launch the query builder. We'll just log in, and what this allows us to do is to create ad hoc queries against our data model. In this case I've just selected a table. I'm going to output all the fields and clicked on preview. That'll bring back the results, and you can see up here that we've got a debug query information menu item. That allows you to inspect the SQL statement generated by the engine that was derived from the data model. And if there is a syntax error, this window will come up automatically, and you can then determine what part of the SQL statement is incorrect. Below the SQL statement you'll find there's the XML representation of the query, and you can see here it contains information about the unique codes for each column in the query. If an error does occur, it'll also show you the before and after resolution of the control tags. So this is quite a handy window to know about. A data model can also create control tags or state values that contain information such as what version of the schema is available and what security settings are doing, and other customizations. You can determine the current state of these values by selecting the product and then debug, and from the view select state values. They're broken down into product-wide state values and user-based state values. Obviously, when a user logs in, they can have state values that are particular to their role. So in EventWorks there are no state values created, so at the moment there are no items listed here. But if there were, I could then select on them and inspect the values and debug my data model that way. The other setting in here is tables, which allows you to see all the attributes of the tables that are created. This is quite handy when you're creating fields and dynamically at runtime, so you can check the state in which they've been created. The process I'm showing you here is basically a ad hoc process for testing. There is an automated process for testing as well, and that's the query tester. What this allows you to do is automate the testing for all the tables in your data model. So I'm just going to select EventWorks again, and you can see here it's listed all the tables in my data model, and if I execute, what it will do is, based on the query mode up the top, is automate the testing of all the tables and columns. It'll run a SQL statement for every possible combination. You can see I've got options for tuning the tests so that I can exclude joins or use the second value from a value list instead of the first, things like that. After running the test, you can see that the items that have failed to come up in red, and then you can then open them up and investigate what's gone wrong. For example, we've got an invalid column name. So This certainly gives you a better feel for how robust your data model is in a short amount of time. And as before, you can see that you can launch the debug window to investigate the actual values of the state values on a product level or a user level. Now, related to this is performance testing of the SQL statements. The performance tester is not available from the menu. You need to make a direct shortcut to the application in the program files directory. Once you've done that, you can launch the application. You'll get a full list of all the functionality, and in here we've got the performance tester. From the performance tester, what you're able to do is to load a query that you've saved before and repeat iteration tests on that query and get stats as to how fast it's running. This is quite handy when you've got bottlenecks or high frequency queries that need to be tuned. So you can load 2 queries and monitor their performance. We also use this for load testing to get a feel for how much the server can handle. Next, I'll go on to Dotnet Coding. As you may know, you can include Dotnet code in Studio from a Visual Studio, and when you do this, you can compile the code with debugging. And given that you've got debugging turned on, you can then attach your projects to the DLLs that are running under the application, and then trace through your code, which is quite handy. If an error does occur in any of the applications, you can find entries in the Windows event log relating to those errors. And I've just brought up the event log here, and you can see that there are entries in the log related to, for example, a service starting up or stopping, and also runtime errors. So that's another area that you can check, especially when you've got the service running and there are no dialogues for you to check. Also, if a client reports some issue with the data model and you wish to diagnose it after the fact, what you can do is get the client to actually save their data model to a file, their query to a file. So let's just pretend that this is a query that we need to investigate. So we can ask them to go into the query builder and then save the query to a file, and it's in XML format. But if they save it to a file and then email it off to you, you can then reload the query and diagnose the issue. And finally, in closing, when compiling data models and there's .NET code involved, it's important that no service be running in the background, because the DLLs are locked by the service. So before you start compiling and data models, always check that the services are shut down. For example, in client setup, you can select stop service. This is important so that DLLs are not locked.